Chapter 2. Almost Losing Your Spirit.
As I worked at a vigil estate, I took a liking to their oldest daughter, Hannah. At that time, she was developing into a young woman who didn't always see eye to eye with her mother. The more she grew up, the more their views diverged, and I was there to witness it. While her mother was impulsive and would do anything to achieve her goals, Hannah was cautious and considered all the implications of her decisions. Their disagreements never turned into full-blown arguments because Hannah would always retreat in silence. This made her feel isolated and lonely, so she often came to me, seeking comfort. Surprisingly, Hannah valued my opinion, even though I was part of the household staff. Of course, we couldn't be considered friends and never talked about our feelings. Even though I tried to keep my relationship with her strictly professional, I often failed, carried away by her inviting personality. It seemed she saw me more as an older sister than anything else. I would wake up every morning to the sound of hooves, the horses' playful scuffling, and her laughter as they went by close to my window. Whenever she would see me peek through the window, she waved from her horse Spirit, her greatest love. There was something magical about watching her ride. Even when she was sick, she made sure her horse was taken care of, making all of us worry. Sadly, one day I found myself in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that was a day that started an avalanche of unexpected events in my life. I was doing some work behind the house when a terrified scream cut the silence. "Is that Hannah?" Holding my breath, I swiftly turned towards the pastures. Curled up on the ground, Hannah was holding her arm closely to her chest while the horse was still rearing up on its hind legs, accompanied by a distressful whinny. Did Spirit get spooked and throw her off his back? "Lady Hannah, I'll be there in a minute," I yelled across the meadow. Dropping everything, I sprinted to the house for help, as I didn't know much about first aid or horses. When her parents and I arrived, she was still on the ground with a painful expression on her face, slightly shaking. There was blood dripping down her arm, and she was reluctant to let anyone touch it. Near her feet was the helmet she so rarely fastened completely, and kneeling on the damp ground, I prayed she hadn't hit her head. Her answers were clear, as was her gaze, filled with unshed tears lingering in her eyes. Without touching her, I checked the scene. Her helmet and head were clean, without grass or dirt, and she didn't complain of a headache, which slightly eased the tightness in my chest. Meanwhile, Tempest was pacing around, ruining his expensive leather shoes in hidden puddles, blaming everything and everyone until he got so furious that he pulled up his gun to shoot the Spirit, who was not far, wandering around. I jumped up to stop him, but Hannah's voice was the first to reach him. "No, Father, don't. He's my friend. It's not his fault," she yelled, still tightly holding onto her bleeding arm. I remained rooted to the spot, not breathing, as he waved the gun around, waiting to see what he would do. Seconds felt like forever. He looked at the sky full of rage and started shooting upwards, letting out an angry scream that scared the birds nesting in the nearby trees. He was usually quite passive, so this reaction made me feel unsafe in his presence. While he was dealing with his emotions the best he knew, Eris and I tried to focus on Hannah's injury and help the best we could. Not far behind were a few more maids rushing to help, their knees buckling in after hearing the gunshots. They ran frantically back and forth, carrying compresses, bandages, and water. My hands worked a mile a minute to quickly assist Eris, who was wrapping Hannah's arm in a very unprofessional manner. "It will be fine. Thankfully, it doesn't look too." My head snapped around as I felt a burning slap. My face quickly went numb, and the eye on that side started to water. Breathless, My gaze met with the saddened and widened eyes of my dear Hannah. Why Eris did something like that, I could only guess. What are you waiting for? Pack the bags and take her to the hospital, Eris screamed, her mouth opening as wide as it could. I read her lips because her voice wasn't reaching my brain. Why yes, I said, my words breaking. Simply, I was shocked. While I was running back to pack the clothes, the adrenaline started to subside. I was spinning all the possibilities in my head. What could have caused a usually calm horse to throw its rider off its back? It could have been anything from an unusual sound to some wild animal, or maybe Hannah made a mistake in handling him. Thankfully, I was able to pack everything and drive her to the hospital with a cool head. Her lowered head and hunched shoulders were a clear indicator that she didn't feel like talking. I was a good driver, so we got there fast and safely. Not long after I admitted her to the town hospital, her parents arrived, acting like they were the only ones there. Eris was frantically trying to find Hannah's doctor, disturbing everyone in her way. It obviously wasn't anything so serious. The cut was deep, but a few stitches would probably do the work. Once again, her parents showed a lack of maturity. Doctor, please tell me my daughter is okay. Please, she pleaded, clutching her chest, pretending to feel lightheaded. There is no reason to worry. She has been admitted, and her wound has been managed. Except for the open wound, there is a small fracture, so she should rest for a few days. Everything needs to heal well. With a compassionate expression, he turned to Tempest. Also, I must inform you that it's possible she will be left with a small scar. The doctor moved on to other patients, and their focus shifted to me. They glared at me from the corner of their eyes and muttered under their breath. They fell silent, and Eris moved closer, while I was sitting on a chair in the waiting room. You are responsible for this, she yelled and smacked me, for the second time that day. You should have taken care of the twins and not wandered around the horses that are not used to you. If you were not there, the horse wouldn't get spooked. She turned her face away from me, her voice ringing in the waiting room. You lowly people don't know your place. I wasn't close to. Don't dare talk back to me, you inferior creature. As expected, her comments grabbed some unwanted attention. The people started to fidget and mumble, gesturing and shaking their heads, prompting Tempest to approach his wife, pulling her closer to himself, tense from the ripple that was spreading through the waiting room. We should keep a low profile. The situation with low-born families is too unstable, he said in a low tone. You're telling me I should be afraid of them? It's the other way around. In that waiting room, packed with people of lower status, they were outnumbered. With a few smiley nods, Tempest seemed to calm what his wife caused, greeting the people he knew. As if he were saying, forgive us. My wife is under huge amounts of stress. They may have fooled others, but I saw through their facade. Their cruelty was merely a cover for their cowardice and lack of self-esteem. Simple as that. When we returned home, Hannah went to her room to rest, while I was ordered by her parents to meet them in their ground floor office. I didn't expect anything good to come out of that call. It wasn't their custom to call servants to their office, so I was dragging my feet through the hallway, preparing myself mentally. Like I feared, I received a severe beating with a branch that looked more like a whip. I expected a lot, but not that. Yeah, I remembered it for a long time. Her dad was the one holding the stick, but the idea was her mother's. That woman wanted to teach me where my place was. 4 days, I had bruises all over my body. I never experienced something like that in my life. It was burning and itching at the same time, making sleep feel like hell. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have gained anything by confronting her, only more problems. Thankfully, from a young age, I managed pain well. I was one of those unruly kids with strict parents who got hurt often. One of the rare things I am grateful to my parents for is that they never lifted their hand on me. Never. But some of the wounds they caused me, I still carry. Called in by Tempus, Han and Hallie witnessed everything. I'm sure that gave them some sort of trauma. Seeing their parents beat up their loved nanny must have been so confusing to them as they cried their tiny tears in silence. This just shows they wanted their kids to continue in their cruel footsteps, excluding anyone who doesn't meet their standards. Deranged individuals. But who am I to judge? Even days later, Tempus and Eris continued to blame me because, as they believed, I was near Hannah at the time of the accident. Yes, I heard her first, but I didn't witness it, and nobody dared to stand up to protect me. It didn't take long before that started to trigger me. I want to kill them. I could have done it. At moments like that, I fought the urge to go back to my old ways and give up on everything I worked on. At that time, I wasn't worried about myself. I believed in myself, so I had very little fear. Therefore, I was not far from doing some crazy stuff. If they only knew what they were doing and who they were dealing with, they would have trembled out of fear. You chose another path, I had to remind myself. I thought it through. Once again, I was sure I didn't want to go back to my old self. However, I had another side to me that I was fighting to keep at bay in this kind of situation. I was trying my best to be nice and calm. I wanted to become a better person through the hardships that life brought me, like any other decent person out there. I just focused on being happy and keeping an easygoing perspective in life. I can't let them be right,